All right, so to pick up where we left off, we're working with the Revolve Vessel, or we're working with the Revolve Vessel project using the Revolve tool to make a rounded flower pot or planting pot and a dish. So it will require two separate bodies. In that, we are also exploring now the new update to Fusion. That is the addition of the different options for starting a project. So let me switch over to Fusion and we'll go over that stuff. So the goal was we are going to have a basic shape, and this is the form we left off with last time. Just a really simple form, creating this by just using a sketch outline around using the origin point as your axis and using the revolve tool to spin that around and create a solid shape, rounded solid shape. We're going to modify these going forward. Now, one of the quick things I'm going to just show you starting a new project, just to remind everybody. A new update to Fusion asks you if you want to start with any kind of specific design. Frankly, going forward from the first project, because that was just a single object, ignore the rest. Your default setting, and hopefully Fusion starts actually letting you remember the default setting, use the hybrid design. Anybody that is already familiar with Fusion, this is essentially what it already was. It allows you to create separate components, which just helps with organization. It allows you to keep everything separate and allows you to build parts and then assemble them as you need to. If you forget, and this is a single object, all you have to do under the project tree here on the left, under, it says unsaved right now, under document settings, where it was just how you can swap back and forth between changing your units, so inches to millimeters. The other option is allowing you to change, it says hybrid design, mouse over the little pencil symbol. That allows you to swap back and forth to assembly, part, and hybrid. So if you forget, just put it into hybrid. You cannot go back to single part if you switch it hybrid, but that doesn't matter. I'm sorry that's one additional layer to remember, but that is the update that they have made for whatever. Anyhow, so starting with our single vessel using the Revolve tool. And I'll review that quickly just for people that need the refresher. We are going to also be creating a tray, so a drip tray, and then down inside, we are going to be making drain holes. So let me switch to the other one that is the direct one. Makes more sense. Now let's see, which one was the one that I made in class? Ah, that one. There we go. So we use that to create the vessel as well as the drip tray. And we used holes used in a sketch, not using the hole tool while that is available. I want you to use the sketch and extrude because we're just expanding on using different ways to use a sketch extrude. So how do we create that? Real quick. We're going to create a sketch. And in this case, we talked briefly about this before, but you have three main axes in Fusion, the X, Y, and Z. And unfortunately, I don't have my green, red, and blue markers, but just to give you a reference, X refers to, in three-dimensional coordinates, left and right. Y is forward and back. Z is up and down. In between those are faces, are surfaces. You have your XZ, YZ, and XY going up and backwards. For the most part, we are going to be making on either the XZ, so that would be like you're working directly in front of you, or the XY, which would be like a sheet of paper working down on your table. The first project, when we sketched extruded, we were on the XY plane, like you're working flat on your table. In this case, we are creating a profile in the XZ plane, and then we are revolving it around the Z axis, moving it around. There. So, a quick reference, what we did before is I created a sketch selecting the XZ plane between the red and the blue. I created a quick box because the frame for this is we want the whole thing to be about 100 by 100 or 120, somewhere in there. So if it's 100 millimeters tall, but I only need half. So if I hit tab, go over, I'm only making this 50 millimeters wide because the whole thing I'm only making, instead of like a cross section, I'm only using half of a cross section. So as a quick reference, I'm just going to use that. I'm going to turn this into a construction box or a construction line by selecting the whole thing, double click on it, and just press X on my keyboard. And then I'm just going to use in this case, a fit point spline. And somewhere toward the top, if you go out of bounds, that's okay. And then ending at the bottom or before it. I'm going to draw a straight line using the line tool, going from that point and meeting smack in the middle on the origin point. So I drew this line as my kind of sort of wavy line, and then this line that connects to the origin. No big.
So how did you get the square?
That is using the square or the rectangle box. From there, because I want to be lazy and not draw a second one, I'm going to use one of the modifying tools, which is offset. And this allows me to select one line and two, so the two I just drew, not the box, just the wavy line and the straight line. And then I can use the arrow key or type it in and drag it in or out. And that just allows me to make a second offset line some direction across. I don't want to make this larger than 3 millimeters because that gets unnecessarily thick. And because I'm going inward or left, I'm going to use negative. So -3. Good enough. You see the red line copying? It's slightly smaller. Good. Now it's an open sketch because it's just these two lines. I need to close that. I'll just use a straight line again. Point to point. And then down at the bottom, point to point. And now that inside goes blue and shows that it is now a closed sketch. Just that part. That's all we need. And then finish sketch. So that's pretty much it. From there, we're just using the Revolve tool, which takes a profile and spins it around. 1 second. So I select that profile. Because I drew it smack in the middle using the origin point, I can now go to my toolbox, select axis, and that is the blue line, which also is this sketch line because they're one and the same. Now it spins it around, and that's it. That's how we're making the new body. We're going to do the exact same thing to make a tray, which in this case, down here, same deal, just a different body. That's it. In order to make holes in the bottom, one thing I haven't done is save. You should always save first. So I'm going to type in 00 because that I get to put mine to the top because I am special, or just the teacher because I don't want to go looking for mine. You put your name in. New class example. There we go. And let me pause for a second. All right. So then to make the holes, what we did is we created a sketch. So with the new one I'm working on, I'm going to orbit underneath and I'm going to create a new sketch. So new sketch. And I can select what is the XY plane. I'm just looking at it from below, or I'm just looking at the bottom of the pot. It's the exact same thing in this case. But if you're working not on the origin, you can actually select faces to work from. I'm going to use a center circle and just somewhere, and I'm going to use like on one of these major axes because it just makes it easier. That is literally all. So somewhere in between there, click, and I don't know, let's say 8 millimeters. This is just a reference point. Remember, if you need rulers, we have rulers. If you need a reference point, anything larger, well, it gets larger, but pretty well good. And instead of drawing multiples, I can be lazy and use the circle pattern tool, which mine is already set up here. But if you go down and create circle pattern, objects to make copies of, just the circle, Sorry, I keep getting this dry cough. Center point is the center, and there you go. Dang it. I was sick last week, and I keep getting this as a little gift from beyond. Click and drag, and you can actually add and subtract right here, or you can type it in numerically. It's up to you. Sorry. Hit OK, and that's it. And then from there, we're just going to use an extrude like we did for the first project. Extrude, select all 5 of them. Dang it. And just drag it upwards. See how it goes red, and on the toolbox, automatically to cut. There we go. Excuse me. Okay, so that's pretty much it. We can just use those circle pattern tools. Or what we can do is I'm going to back up, and instead of extruding all of those, I'm going to instead, you can do either way, it does not matter. I'm showing y'all that instead of all 5 of those, I can select, if I had just made the one cut, and then say I wanted to put a fillet or a chamfer on that. Let's do just that. I don't know, 0.5. Just a wee little curvature, or maybe 1. Instead of having to add fillets and all the things to all the things, I can complete 1. Now use the circle pattern tool. On the completed thing, make sure it's selected by faces or features. And I just need those little faces. By features, it should be doing all of it. And do the exact same thing. So around that blue axis. And now I can add and subtract multiples of the completed thing. And that's what we're going to use to go forward. So let's get to that if you haven't already. And then we're going to start adding our features and really play around with this stuff. Let me save. Drainage holes. Okay, so we got that. Cool. So this is where we get, now we're going to add it. We're going to create a tray, do the exact same thing. And I just jumped over to the other project. This is the exact same thing. You just make it a second one. That's your drip tray. So in other words, if I just kept it as this, great. Set that on a shelf and fill it full of water. Now I have a wet shelf. You need something to put it on. In this case, we're making the tray also. Yes, you could always put it on a plate, a tray, or a drill bowl, whatever. But what we want to do, we're going to use those same tools plus a new one called Emboss to create stuff on the surface. Now, you can use this tool to project off, to cut in, or even cut all the way through. Some of you have already experimented with this and found some cool ideas. Excellent. What we're going to do with this is, and you can even take this as the same thing you did for the first project. If you want to, and you can literally import the drawing, the sketch from the first one into this and use that, as long as it's not too complex. But I want to show you how to use the emboss tool. So what the emboss tool is, and I have the tool already set up on mine, but essentially it is an extrude that follows the curvature of a surface. So instead of it just being straight, it follows the curve. And the trick is, though, you have to have the emboss floating out in front. So what we're going to do to create a sketch out in front, if you look to the right on your toolbar, you have a construct area, and we're going to use the very top one, which is already there, offset plane, or if you have the drop down, offset plane. No worries. What that is, it allows me to create a virtual, well, it's all virtual, a plane floating away from the original space. Somebody click that, and if it helps, hide the bodies. We're back to our origin. Same thing, the XZ plane, so the green or the red and the blue, like I'm working right in front of myself, and I'm going to click and drag that out somewhere out in front. It could be a mile away, it could be 3 millimeters away, but just so long as it is in front of the body you just made, your vessel. Doesn't matter how far. There we are. So now I have this thing floating out in front. So now I can create a sketch floating on that plane. So you'll see that as I move around, my virtual work plane is actually in front of my vessel. And that's important for emboss, not always, but usually it works much better is if it's floating out in front. So I'm just going to draw something in front. Now, if it helps to create like a box around or anything like that, we played with this before. I'm going to go to create and project. And what this does is it projects a silhouette of this shape. So on the selection, on the toolbox here, you can switch over to the bodies, the little marshmallow symbol for bodies. And you see how it selects the whole thing. I hit OK. And there's a purple outline. If I hide the bodies, now I have this purple outline. What that does is if I wanted to draw on top of this bottle, and this is virtual bottle, project essentially is this projector projecting. So think of it as I'm pushing it outward, and I am left with the silhouette, the backdrop, the flat outline. Not out here. I'm creating this flat outline behind, only it's reversed. So it's a little bit brainstorming. But that's essentially what I'm doing. And that just lets me have an outline of my object. So just like the dotted box I drew before, now I know that whatever I draw is in front of that bottle. So cool, whatever. I don't know. Smiley face. Well, make a different one. Mine's going to be a weird one because it always is weird. Fine, jack-o'-lantern face. Oh no. I'm going to use the offset tool again. What happened to my... What the hell? Oh, I accidentally trimmed. That's because I used trim instead of offset. Whoopsie daisy. Oops. And all I'm doing here is... All right. Or it's a very confused Kool-Aid man. Whatever. But... Man, all right. But that is floating out in front. So now I'm going to finish sketch. And I'm going to use the emboss tool. So go to create, not extrude, but emboss. And I'm going to select the eyeballs and my mouth. Now back on the toolbox, I select faces. And I select the face of the round thing, which is all of it. So whatever. But now, instead of it being straight, flat, it follows the curvature of that face. I can make it deeper or shallower. Emboss goes outward. Deboss is cutting inward. What's up, Sarah? Oh, okay, cool. Come on down.
Breaks my brain. Two classes.
Super good. So remember, this is only 3 millimeters thick. So if I make it 3 or more, debossing, it's going to cut through. I can do that. So if I want, all right, it doesn't matter. If I make it 5, now it's projecting outward. If I make it 15, going further. Now it's getting really confusing. But one of the things here I want you to remember, it's not going straight. It uses like the offset line tool. So what's happening is it's not just going straight out. Just like when I use the offset, it's not exactly, the further out it goes, is it warps that line more and more. So what's happening is it's going outward, not straight, but essentially perpendicular at every point at the same time to that curvature. So essentially it just curves more. Really, that's just an extra way of saying it curves a bit. See. So the other way, of course, is I could deboss, and if it's more than the thickness, well, it's going to cut through. Well, couldn't I just use extrude? Well, yeah, obviously, but that's pretty much what it does. So let's just make it mildly less unsettling. Mildly, because some unsettling is fun. Okay, that's all well and good. Why'd we bother with all that? Now we can repeat those patterns. Or if you wanted to actually make this a pattern, you can repeat that going back to using the circle pattern tool. So with the options, I can select features, just like we did for the drainage holes, a completed feature. And this time, the whole feature means the whole face. And if I go around that axis again, just like I did before. The Z-axis, I'm spinning it around. Everything is spinning around the Z-axis in this project. 3 of them. Now it's on all. But we can also repeat that with like details. I just swapped over to the other one that's already made. So if I do the same thing, do a construction plane, blah, 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 same deal. I'm just repeating the thing. Sketch on there, project the outline. You don't have to do that. I just do. But let's say instead of that, let's do something like, let's draw a diagonal line across. Because I feel like I'm being, or because I am lazy, I can be that. I can be that. You could be that too. Because I'm using the outline, that projection, that counts as an outline, so I can just project just that straight line. So now, let me finish that, and let's emboss just that line onto the faces. And now I have the one dealie. Now let's use the circle pattern on that feature around the blue axis, the Z-axis, and now let's do like a whole pile of the damn things. Now I will warn you, this is where you better start saving your project before every time you do something like this, because this eats up resources big time, especially if we do something like, before I do this part, now let's do something like, let me go back to the sketch, extrude, and I'm just going to draw a line straight down the axis, because what I'm doing, I'm just doing this, you'll get a second, that's just a reference point because I want to use the mirror tool to mirror those lines across there. Ooh, differenty. So now I can complete all of that. Goes all the way. And save. Come on, save. Don't crash on me, please. Lines. But now I can also emboss. Let me unhide that sketch because it does that. The other line, you know where this is going. Of course, the problem is you should have done this before. Yeah, here you go. This craps up the whole works. So what I needed to do, emboss doesn't like to have intersecting things. So instead, I'm going to go back and modify that emboss and just also select the other lines. Shut up. I will warn you sometimes if you go back and modify, see it's giving me all these errors. So kind of creates a problem. But what you can do is if you do run into those errors, what I've had to do is just delete the action. Yeah, shut up. I've had to delete it and repeat it. So I just deleted the tool and I'm repeating it just because it doesn't like the saved information like confuses it. So I'm going to do that again. Just select everything now. Faces there. Cannot emboss. You can. Yeah, no, it's just being a jerk now. Oh, it's probably I don't know. Ghost in the pipes. Anyway, you can have it going opposite directions. All right, fine. Well, it's going to be a jerk about it now, so, but you get the idea. Same deal. Extrude on there. Why is it? I have angered it now.
The sketch lines.
Yes, hello. I would like to print
Yeah.
a vase on my base.
Basically. What the heck? Now it's
This will make the print get the
all right. Well, unfortunately, I angered it because I did something that it didn't like, and now it's just saving all that information. I did. I angered the machine.
Then they did that.
I don't know why it's refusing to do that now. Well, you saw it. You all saw it, and it worked. All right. Well, anyway, we can continue to play with these patterns, things like that. But okay, well, if it's going to fight me on that, one of the other things we can do with this is, all right, say I did in fact want to keep that. All right, that's all well and good. Tell you what, one other way you can play with this tool, a lot of fun, is, all right, let's bring that sketch back up. I made all of that. And yes, you can extrude. But in this case, what I want to do, I'm going to just get rid of literally everything else. Oops. So if I extrude that out, that cuts everything. And I'm just left with, whoops. Well, I accidentally have this little fiddly bit there. And I just wanted that. Fiddly bits are important in science. So now I just have that one little tiny cross section. I can circle pattern that too. I can circle pattern, or in this case, bodies, that around the x-axis or z-axis again. And I can just keep making stuff until I break my computer.
Set the computer on fire.
Now, granted, this creates like a nightmare, but you can obviously like join all these together in a single body and that such. Now, this is not a printable object yet, but we can make like just a roundy thing at the top. And what I mean by that is, all right, well, I've got this nightmare of different things. So let's join. So let's combine these. I just need to select one, and then I'll select all the things. So I'm just going to join everything together and make this slightly less hellacious. Save. Always save. See, it's now it's this now a basket. And all I have to do really on something like this is I can just like unhide that unhide that first little sketch. And something like this. Yeah, let's just go back into that one, and I guess like I don't know, let's just make like a circle there. Make it the same, make it bigger, doesn't matter, let's make it bigger. Now that's not going to change anything, but let's see here. Is that the basket? Yeah. Let's label that. So I've got my basket, and if I do one last revolve, so I'm still using the revolve tool, and I'm just going to select that circle I just made. Make sure I get the whole thing. Revolve it around the axis. Again, the same z-axis there. And all I just made is like a little loop. And let's instead make sure it joins, not cuts. Now it's a snazzy little baskety thing. So technically that fulfills the project too. That is still made with the revolve tool and using the emboss or extrude. It definitely has drainage. And it is printable. It just might take a few extra minutes or hours. So the goal here is, again, let me see if I can find the drip tray. There we go. Hey, still got a drip tray too. So the goal here is using whatever combination of tools you like. We could make Oh No Kool-Aid Man or just Melancholy Kool-Aid Man. It does, in fact, need to have holes in the bottom, however you like to use that, using Sketch Extrude. Do not use the hole tool to use that, because I want you to learn how to use Sketch and Extrude. Whether or not you make a pattern before or after, it's up to you. However many holes, it's up to you. Probably more than one, or don't make it an entire mesh. But there's a variety of things you could do. But the main thing is with this project, you are making the body and a drip tray. Same method. Drip tray should hold water, because ideally these would actually be able to be plant potting vessels. Blah, blah, blah. you need to have some sort of surface feature. Sketch and emboss, sketch extrude, sketch chop all the things away, and then repeat that pattern however you want. That could even be, it could be a design, it could be a feature. You could even go about and, I don't know, let's see here. Let's just draw a, I'm just adding to this. I did not have to add this to this sketch. But that could even be like a circle pattern. Oops, I meant to emboss that first. See how angry I make this. So now it's got that, and I don't know, let's add like a little fillet. Oop, nope. That could even be like just mildly rounded. See how far I can push that. And then my circle pattern would allow me to make a whole bunch of copies of that feature. Make sure you get the whole thing. Sometimes it doesn't select all the things. Again, everything is around that center axis, that blue Z-axis. And I don't know, let's make a bunch of them. And now it's got a neato little like feature around the lid, or around the lip. And I should have saved it first. Come on, don't crash. Don't crash. Yes! First. One thing. So okay, good opportunity. When it says C pattern failed, that circle pattern failed, sometimes for whatever reason I've run into it, not emboss, whatever reason, sometimes it doesn't like to select by features. That's what I did. And for whatever reason, it doesn't like compute that. So I'm going to change to by faces. And I just have to go through and select all the faces. So I got those, and don't forget that little attaching one. And then again, my Z-axis. And now we can just add all the dots again. Should have saved. It will crash it. There we go. So if you run into that issue, circle pattern failed, sometimes it's because it's by features. I don't know why. Sometimes it just like the computation just fails. But anyway, same deal. I just switched it to change by faces instead of by features. Exact same option. All right. So detailies. Great. So that's the goal there. You need some sort of features on the surface. Repeat the pattern, whether or not it's an actual pattern, whether or not it is like a design. I know those are like synonymous, but whatever. It's got drain holes. It's got a fancy basket. You can have a combination of features. You can do the same thing with text. Whatever you like. That's the goal. So however you end up with that, the goal here is we're trying. I even played with it. I even played with using the circle or a revolve. Just I offset the pattern and made like these weird sweepy lines. And I just made my revolve out here instead of the center. But different ways you can play with it. We're making a planting vessel that you could ideally put a plant in, and it'll even be in time for whatever holiday you choose. But I don't know. If I can divvy up some plants, we'll bring them in next class, and we can like pot some of these things up after we get them printed up. So whatever method you use or basket, you could put a delightful little tea light in there too, and it'll cast some lovely shadows. Which you could actually do the reverse to and have like little silhouettes, whatever. It's up to you. But that's the goal. We're using the Revolve tool to make the vessel in the drip tray, using Emboss to create Sketch and Emboss to create features, using Sketch and Extrude to create holes, or you can mix and match however you like. So play around with it. I'm going to be helping where I can. And don't forget to save. Especially when you start playing with the circle pattern, if you start adding more features, save. Save it a lot and save it before you do the thing, because it might crash. It happens to me often enough, unfortunately. So good luck with it.